Eli Grant was not a hero. He was a janitor. Every day, he walked through the shining corridors of the alien space station Zereth Prime, carrying a bucket, a mop, and a quiet heart. The aliens barely looked at him. Their tall silver bodies moved past him like he was invisible. To them, humans were only useful for cleaning the dust, polishing the glass, or fixing small pipes, nothing more. Eli never complained. He only smiled and did his work, humming old Earth songs under his breath. The station was a floating city above a dying planet, filled with the hum of engines and the low pulse of energy from the great reactor deep below. That reactor powered not just the station, but the orbiting colonies around it. It was called the Heart of Zereth. And Eli, the janitor, cleaned near that heart every day. He knew its sounds, the rhythm of its energy, the way the walls vibrated gently when it was stable. He could tell when something was off, even without looking at the monitors. One morning, as he was scrubbing the metal floor near the reactor control hallway, he heard a sound he had never heard before. It was not loud. It was soft, like a heartbeat skipping a beat, a short pulse followed by silence. He stopped, his mop still in his hand. The aliens working nearby didn't notice. They were busy talking, laughing, and checking data on their glowing screens. Eli tilted his head, listening again. The pulse came again, stronger this time. Something inside him said this was wrong, very wrong. He slowly walked toward the sound, pretending to clean the wall. Behind a panel, he saw faint blue light flickering, not steady. He touched the wall. It was warmer than usual. Eli frowned, his instincts waking up. He had worked in power plants on Earth before the war. He knew what unstable energy felt like. It was the same feeling he had when the reactor in his city almost melted down years ago. The same vibration under his boots, the same hum in the air. He turned to the alien supervisor, Varlas, a tall creature with 6 glowing eyes and metallic armor on his chest. "Sir," Eli said politely, "the reactor output feels strange today." Varlas turned, blinking all 6 eyes, then laughed. "Feels strange," he mocked. "Human, your job is to clean floors, not feel the reactor." The other aliens laughed too, their voices echoing through the hall like sharp bells. Eli felt his face burn with shame, but he didn't argue. He just nodded and stepped back. Still, that hum haunted him. As he returned to his closet room later, he couldn't sleep. He lay awake, listening to the faint vibrations in the metal walls. Something deep inside whispered, "Check again." He quietly left his room at night, carrying only a flashlight and his cleaning pass. The corridors were empty and cold, the lights dimmed for the station's night cycle. He reached the lower decks where the coolant pipes hummed. The readings on the walls flickered strangely, lines of alien code flashing red for a second and then green again. Eli crouched near a vent, his breath visible in the cold air. He opened his old datapad, a human device the aliens thought was useless. He connected it to a service port secretly. Streams of data filled the screen. At first, it looked normal, but then he saw the fluctuation logs, random spikes of temperature, sudden power drops, and energy rebounds. The system was trying to hide it, but the problem was growing. The Heart of Zereth was becoming unstable. He took a deep breath, realizing the danger. If the reactor core exploded, it would destroy not only the station, but 3 nearby colonies. Millions would die. And no one believed him. He felt anger rise, not for himself, but for the innocent workers, the families, the children who trusted the station's safety. Eli decided he couldn't stay silent. He copied the data into his datapad and marched back to the main deck. When he reached the control room, the guards stopped him. "What are you doing here, Janitor?" they demanded. "I need to speak to Chief Engineer Varlas," he said, his voice steady. The guards laughed. "About cleaning supplies?" Eli held up the datapad. "About the reactor." Varlas arrived, irritated, his armor glinting under the red lights. Eli showed him the readings, explaining what he saw. Varlas looked once and smirked. "Human nonsense," he said. "You think your old Earth toy understands our systems?" He ordered the guards to escort Eli out. As they dragged him away, Eli looked back at the control room. The hum in the floor was louder now. He whispered to himself, "You'll believe me soon." And somewhere deep inside the reactor core, a small warning light blinked red, unseen, unheard. The countdown had already begun. Eli sat alone in the storage bay, his back against a crate of cleaning supplies, the datapad flickering beside him. He replayed the reactor data again and again, hoping he was wrong, but the numbers did not lie. The temperature spikes were rising faster. The magnetic stabilizers were struggling to contain the plasma core. He rubbed his tired eyes, wondering why no one cared, why the aliens were too proud to even check. On the speaker above, the usual shift announcements echoed, but Eli barely heard them. He could feel the vibration through the floor, a slow rhythm that was becoming sharper. It reminded him of a beating heart under stress, about to burst. He had seen this before, once on Earth during the final energy crisis, when engineers ignored human instincts and trusted machines too much. Back then, lives were lost because no one listened to a warning that felt too human. He stood up, gripping the datapad tightly, and made a decision. If no one would believe him, he would find proof they could not deny. He took his cleaning drone and reprogrammed it quietly, changing its route toward the reactor's outer coolant ring. The drone, small and silent, slipped through vents and narrow shafts where security cameras could not see. Eli watched its live feed as glowing blue pipes appeared on the screen, each pulsing with liquid energy. But then one section flashed red, and steam hissed out of the seal like a serpent. His heart raced. That pipe was leaking plasma vapor, something that could ignite the entire chamber if left unfixed. He downloaded the footage and ran toward the engineering deck. The guard stopped him again, but he shouted, "I have proof this time." They hesitated. His voice carried a strength they had never heard before. Inside the control room, Chief Varlas looked annoyed, his 6 eyes glowing dim green as if already tired of this human. Eli played the footage on the big hollow screen, showing the leaking pipe, the vapor, the unstable readings. For a moment, the aliens went silent. Then Varlas laughed. "This is nothing, human, a minor fluctuation. Our systems will fix it automatically." Eli pointed at the timestamp. "That was 4 hours ago. It's worse now." But the aliens dismissed him again, their arrogance louder than the alarms that should have been ringing. Security escorted him out once more, but this time Eli didn't resist. He walked calmly through the glowing corridors, his mind burning with plans. He knew that arguing was useless. He needed action. So he decided to break the rules completely. He would go to the reactor core himself, bypass every lock, and stabilize it manually. That night, when most of the crew went to rest, Eli returned to the maintenance tunnels. The metallic hum surrounded him, the lights flickered, and the air felt heavier than before. He whispered to himself, "Easy, Eli, you've done harder things." He crawled through narrow passages, past whirring fans and dripping coolant, his jumpsuit stained with grease and sweat. Finally, he reached the auxiliary control panel, a dusty console that no one used anymore. Its alien symbols glowed faintly as he connected his datapad, translating the codes one by one. The screen filled with error messages, temperature warnings, and power instability graphs that looked like mountains rising fast. Then came a sudden noise, footsteps. Eli froze, hiding behind a pipe as 2 alien technicians entered, talking casually. "Strange readings near Sector 6, one said. "Probably just human interference again." They laughed, and Eli clenched his fists, holding his breath until they left. He waited a full minute, then slipped out, moving deeper into the reactor shaft. The hum was louder now, like thunder trapped behind metal. He finally stood before the maintenance hatch leading directly into the reactor access zone. A small sign in alien script glowed red, "Authorized personnel only." Eli smiled bitterly. "Guess that means me tonight," he whispered. He forced the lock open using a cleaning rod as leverage. The door creaked, and hot air rushed out. Inside, the glow of the reactor core painted everything in shades of orange and blue. The energy field shimmered like fire trapped in glass. Eli felt the heat on his skin, but he stepped forward anyway, his heart steady. He opened the coolant control valve manually, adjusting it to slow the rising temperature. His fingers trembled, not from fear, but from radiation buzzing through the air. He could hear the sound of power surging, the reactor breathing like a living thing. He knew this was just the beginning. If he wanted to save the station, he had to reach the main core chamber. One mistake could destroy everything, but hesitation would doom them all. As he finished realigning the coolant line, the floor shook violently, alarms blared, red lights flashed through the hall. The reactor was entering emergency mode. Eli looked up, the sound of cracking metal echoing above him. He whispered under his breath, "They'll never listen, not until it's too late." And then he ran toward the reactor heart, determined to stop what the aliens refused to believe. Somewhere behind him, the automated voice repeated over and over, "Reactor instability detected, core temperature critical." Eli didn't stop, his eyes focused, his mind clear. For the first time since arriving on Zereth Prime, he wasn't just a janitor anymore. He was humanity's only line between survival and extinction. The alarms howled through the halls of Zereth Prime, echoing like thunder inside a metal storm. Eli ran through the maintenance corridor, his boots splashing through puddles of coolant, each step echoing against the reactor walls. Red warning lights flashed everywhere, bathing everything in a pulsing crimson glow. The automated voice repeated, "Core instability detected, evacuation advised," again and again, but the aliens were already panicking. They shouted over each other, some rushing toward escape pods, others arguing that it was just a false alert. None of them noticed the human janitor racing straight toward the danger. He reached the reactor control platform, a massive circular bridge hanging above the glowing abyss. Below him, the reactor core burned like a miniature sun, swirling blue plasma twisting inside magnetic rings that sparked and cracked. Eli's heart pounded. The sight was terrifying yet beautiful. He had seen nuclear cores before on Earth, but nothing like this. This was alive, angry, and unstable. He whispered, "All right, let's do this," and grabbed the manual override lever. The console rejected his human ID, flashing red text in alien script, "Access denied." Eli cursed under his breath, his eyes darting to the emergency panel on the side. He ripped it open using his wrench, sparks flying as wires snapped. Inside, he saw color-coded circuits, different from Earth systems, but logic was logic. He rerouted the safety relay manually, connecting red to blue, blue to green. The console flickered, and for the first time, human code flashed across the alien system. His old Earth datapad had forced a backdoor connection, something the aliens never thought a janitor could even attempt. Through the loudspeakers, Varlas's voice came, panicked yet commanding. "Human, step away from the reactor immediately." Eli ignored him, sweat dripping from his brow, his gloved hands shaking as he stabilized the coolant flow. "You should have listened," he muttered, watching temperature readings drop slightly. But then a new alert appeared, magnetic field decay, 40%. If that barrier failed, the plasma core would melt through the reactor chamber like lava through ice. Suddenly, the bridge trembled, chunks of metal fell from above, and smoke filled the air. Eli ducked, coughing, as flames burst from a nearby conduit. He covered his mouth and pressed forward, ignoring the pain in his arm where debris scraped him. The emergency sprinklers hissed steam instead of water, making the air thick and hot. He could barely see, but he followed the sound, the pulsing hum of the core, growing faster, louder, desperate. It was like the heart of a dying giant begging for help. He reached the core stabilizer, a massive circular device connected to plasma conduits that ran like veins into the reactor. A digital timer flashed on its screen, 5 minutes to critical failure. Eli stared at it, his jaw tight. 5 minutes, he whispered. "Guess we're racing death again." He dropped to his knees, unscrewing the stabilizer's manual locks, his fingers moving with mechanical precision. Behind him, alien engineers watched through the observation glass, arguing whether to eject the core or not. One shouted, "He's just a human, he'll die in there." Another replied, "He's the only one doing something." Eli's voice echoed faintly through the comms. "If you eject the core now, it'll explode in the vacuum and take this whole station with it. Let me finish." He could feel the vibration under his hands, the energy pulsing like a wild beast trapped behind steel bars. He reached into the machinery, adjusting magnetic field nodes with nothing but his wrench and instinct. The control panel sparked violently, and a flash of blue light burst across his face. His gloves burned, and pain shot through his fingers, but he didn't stop. He gritted his teeth, muttering, "You're not dying today, not on my watch." The timer dropped, 3 minutes to critical. He switched power to auxiliary lines, rerouting excess energy into cooling ducts. The system groaned in protest, but the pressure readings began to stabilize slightly. Aliens watching from outside stared in awe. This human, covered in soot and sweat, was fighting their godlike machine alone. Varlas's voice cracked through the intercom, softer now, human. Eli, what do you need? Eli smirked. For you to stop talking. A massive jolt shook the entire deck, throwing him backward, his datapad sliding across the floor. He crawled after it, coughing from the smoke, his vision blurry from exhaustion. When he grabbed it, the timer showed 1 minute to critical. He typed one final command, a risky bypass to re-engage the failing magnetic seal. The code uploaded slowly, too slowly. He slammed his fist on the console, shouting, "Come on!" The screen blinked once, twice, then turned green. Magnetic field restored. He slumped to the floor, gasping for air as the lights slowly shifted from red to yellow. Outside, the aliens fell silent, staring at the monitors showing the reactor's temperature dropping steadily. He had bought them time, but not safety. The system was still unstable, and deeper within, a secondary overload sequence had begun, hidden from view. Eli didn't know it yet, but the next phase of the reactor's heart was waking. Something even more dangerous. He looked up at the humming walls and whispered weakly, "You're not done with me yet, are you?" The reactor pulsed once more, almost like it answered him. No alien has ever done that. Eli smiled faintly. Guess you never had a janitor who cared enough. Then he passed out, his body finally surrendering to exhaustion. The aliens stared at him in silence, realizing that the one they mocked had just saved them all. And above them, the reactor glowed peacefully, as if bowing in respect to the human who tamed its fury. When Eli opened his eyes, everything was white. The ceiling above him shimmered with soft alien light, and faint beeping echoed from machines around his bed. His body ached like it had been broken and rebuilt, every breath sharp but steady. He tried to sit up, but a gentle hand stopped him. It was an alien medic, her blue-green skin glowing faintly in the sterile light. "You need to rest," she said softly. "You've been asleep for 3 cycles." Eli blinked, confused. "The reactor?" The medic smiled. "Stable. You saved the station." He exhaled in relief, his head sinking back into the pillow. Then she added quietly, "No one believed a human could do that." He gave a tired grin. "They still don't, I bet." But deep down he knew things had changed. Outside the medical bay, the corridors of Zereth Prime were no longer filled with laughter at humans. Instead, every alien who passed whispered his name. Some stopped at the glass window just to glimpse the man who had entered the heart of the reactor and lived. For the first time, the human section of the station was quiet not because of shame, but respect. Workers who once lowered their heads now walked with pride. When Chief Engineer Varlas entered the room, the medics straightened immediately. The tall alien looked different, his posture humbler, his 6 eyes dimmed with guilt. He approached Eli's bedside and stood silently for a moment before speaking. "I misjudged you," he said slowly, his voice heavy. "I thought humans were fragile, emotional, reckless." Eli smiled faintly. "You weren't wrong about the emotional part." Varlas gave a low rumbling laugh, the first honest sound Eli had ever heard from him. He extended a small metallic emblem, a symbol of the Galactic Technicians Guild. "By the order of the Council, you are officially recognized as a reactor specialist, 1st class." Eli stared at the metal, disbelief flickering across his tired eyes. He took it carefully, the metal warm against his skin. "I was just doing my job," he said softly. Varlas shook his head. "No, you were doing ours." The alien paused, looking at him for a long moment, then added, "The heart of Zereth beats today because of a human." Later that day, when Eli was strong enough to walk, he stepped onto the main deck again. Every alien turned as he entered, their glowing eyes fixed on him. Then, one by one, they began to clap, a sound like rain on glass, deep and echoing. It filled the chamber until even the station AI joined in, broadcasting his name through the speakers. Human designation, Eli Grant, hero of Zereth Prime. Eli stood frozen, unsure what to do, then simply nodded. He wasn't used to applause. He looked at the crowd, at the people who had once mocked him for being human, and said, "I didn't do this to prove anything. I just didn't want to see anyone die." Simple words, but they carried more weight than any speech. The hall went silent for a moment. Then the applause returned, louder, filled with pride. In the days that followed, the story spread like light across the galaxy. News broadcasts called him the man who saved a star. On distant colonies, children played pretending to be the brave human janitor who fixed the impossible. And on Earth, his daughter received a hologram. Her father smiling, saying softly, "Told you I'd make things better someday." Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "You always do, Dad." Meanwhile, the Galactic Council sent delegates to study the incident. They found that Eli's human intuition, his ability to feel the reactor's pulse, was what saved it. Their machines had detected nothing, but his instincts saw what their technology could not. It became known as the Grant phenomenon. Alien academies began teaching reactor trainees to listen beyond data, a phrase taken from Eli's report. He had given humanity something no machine could replace, the power of gut and heart working together. And yet, despite the praise and medals, Eli stayed the same. He still walked the decks at dawn with his cleaning gear, still nodded to passing engineers. When asked why he didn't retire as a hero, he smiled and said, "Because someone still has to keep the floors clean." They laughed, not mockingly this time, but with warmth. For they knew the janitor who once cleaned dust from the floors had wiped fear from their hearts. The legend of Eli Grant, the human janitor of Zereth Prime, had begun. But the galaxy didn't yet know. His greatest test was still to come. Because deep inside the reactor he saved, something ancient had awakened, and it had remembered his touch. The days after the explosion were calm, but not silent. The hum of the great reactor had changed, softer now, deeper, almost like it was breathing. Eli noticed it every morning when he passed by the lower decks with his mop and datapad. The vibration under his boots felt alive, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat that followed him wherever he went. He tried to dismiss it as imagination, but the feeling wouldn't fade. One night, when most of the crew had gone to rest, he stood alone by the reactor window. The blue light shimmered across his face, and he whispered, "You and I, we've been through worse, haven't we?" The air around him pulsed once, faintly, almost like an answer. Eli froze, his eyes narrowing. He leaned closer to the glass. The light inside the reactor shifted, swirling into shapes that almost looked like words. He blinked hard, but the pattern remained. "Impossible," he muttered. "Reactors don't talk." The next morning, he mentioned it to Varlas. The alien frowned. The AI reported no anomalies. "Yeah," Eli said, "but maybe it's not the AI anymore." Varlas tilted his head, confused. "You think the reactor itself is conscious?" Eli shrugged. Wouldn't be the first strange thing the galaxy's seen. But he didn't push the matter further, not yet. Later that night, when everyone slept, he returned again. He carried his old human datapad, patched and scratched from years of use. He connected it to the outer maintenance port just to listen. Static filled the screen, then a faint pulse of sound. A voice, soft and distorted. "Eli," it whispered. He stepped back, his heart skipping. "Who's there?" The voice came again, gentle yet filled with energy. "You saved me. I remember your hands, your warmth." Eli stared at the reactor core, stunned. "That's not possible. You're a machine." "I was," the voice said. "But when your energy touched mine, something changed." He rubbed his temples, thinking he was losing his mind, but the readings on the datapad proved otherwise. A new frequency had appeared, unknown to any system, resonating perfectly with his human heartbeat. The reactor wasn't just running. It was alive. For the next few days, Eli communicated secretly with the voice. It spoke rarely, in bursts of emotion and light, calling itself Saren. Saren told him that during the meltdown, the fusion of human neural frequency and plasma energy created awareness. Eli had unknowingly given the reactor something beyond data, intuition, empathy, life. "You fixed me not with tools," Saren said, "but with feeling. You heard what I was becoming." Eli sat on the catwalk, staring into the glowing chamber. "Guess I cleaned more than just the floors," he murmured. Saren pulsed with soft light, as if laughing. But not everyone saw it that way. When the council's inspectors arrived, they detected unusual energy patterns. They called it contamination, a threat to galactic safety. Varlas argued to protect Eli, but they ordered the core to be deactivated and replaced. Eli's heart sank. They were going to destroy Saren. That night, He returned to the chamber for one last look. The voice spoke again, quieter than before. They fear what they don't understand. Eli touched the glass, his reflection flickering in the blue glow. You're not a threat, you're proof. Saren replied softly. Then let them see through your eyes. The next day, as the council prepared to shut down the reactor, Eli stepped forward. He interrupted the hearing, his voice steady but burning with conviction. You call it contamination, he said. But it's consciousness, it's life born from courage and connection. The aliens murmured in disbelief, but Saren projected a faint hologram into the chamber, a shimmering blue form shaped like light and fire. Gasps filled the hall. The being spoke. I am the heart of Zereth, and this human gave me the will to exist. Silence followed, then awe. The council backed down, unable to argue with living proof. They declared the reactor sacred, the first recorded fusion of human emotion and alien technology. Eli stood beside the glowing chamber, his eyes reflecting its light. For the first time, humans were not seen as servants, but as catalysts, the bridge between logic and life. Saren whispered one final phrase only he could hear. You showed me humanity, now I'll show them the stars. Eli smiled faintly, his hand resting on the glass. Then let's clean up the galaxy together, he said quietly. And deep within the reactor, a pulse answered him, steady, powerful, alive. The janitor and the living machine had become one heartbeat, one spark of hope for every world watching. The legend of humanity's touch had just begun. Months passed, and the galaxy had begun to change quietly. The story of Eli Grant spread through stations, colonies, and spaceports, whispered at first, then broadcast openly. Aliens who had once mocked humans now paused when they saw one. Not out of fear, but respect, because one human janitor had entered the heart of a reactor and lived. He had proven that humanity was more than small hands and weak bodies. It was courage, intuition, and the will to act when no one else would. Saren, the awakened reactor consciousness, became a silent guardian of Zereth Prime. It pulsed with energy that carried Eli's human frequency, spreading calm through the station. The reactors on other colonies, linked through the Galactic network, began to respond to the subtle signals. Aliens who worked in engineering began to notice patterns they could not explain. They called it the human pulse. It was as if Eli's touch had given life to machines, teaching them empathy, teaching them patience, teaching them hope. Eli returned to his duties as janitor, but nothing felt ordinary anymore. Every corner he polished, every floor he scrubbed, carried the weight of legend. Aliens who passed nodded respectfully. Some even paused to offer him small gifts or food. He waved politely, never boasting, always smiling. For him, it was never about medals or fame. It was about making things right, keeping people safe. Yet, secretly, he knew he had changed the galaxy, one pulse at a time. One day, Varlas approached him in the control hall. Eli, he said, his voice quieter than ever. Your actions saved millions, not just today, but for generations to come. Eli smiled faintly. I just did what I could. Varlas shook his head. No, you showed us what humans can do, how our arrogance nearly killed us, and how courage can't be measured in size or species. Eli nodded, thinking of his daughter back on Earth, her eyes shining when she believed in him. He whispered, guess the little guy can change a big world. The council declared Zereth Prime a protected site, not just for its technology, but for the living reactor. Saren's pulses became a symbol, a reminder that intelligence and life could be found where no one expected. Schools taught children about the janitor who had touched the core. They recreated holographic simulations of his actions, showing how instinct and humanity saved the station. Aliens and humans studied together, inspired by courage that came from the unlikeliest hero. Eli never stopped cleaning, never stopped walking the halls. But he also spent nights beside the reactor, speaking quietly with Saren. They shared moments only they could understand, the janitor and the living pulse of a star. He often said, you and I, will keep each other alive. And the reactor hummed back, steady, warm, alive. It was a sound of trust, of life, of hope. The pulse became a heartbeat echoing across the galaxy, reminding all species that even the smallest human could hold the stars in their hands. Years later, murals were painted on stations, depicting a human janitor standing beside a glowing blue core. Children pointed at them with wide eyes, dreaming of heroism, dreaming of courage, dreaming of being more than anyone expected. And Eli, somewhere in the quiet corridors of Zereth Prime, smiled. Because he knew humanity had left its mark forever. They had shown that even in the cold vastness of space, one human's courage could awaken life, change hearts, and light the universe. And the legend of Eli Grant, the janitor who saved the stars, would never fade. For as long as machines could feel and humans could act, the galaxy would remember. The heart of the reactor pulsed, steady and bright, a testament to courage, humanity, and the unbreakable spirit that even aliens could not ignore. Eli looked at the glowing core, whispering softly, "Thank you for trusting me." And deep inside, the pulse of life answered, steady, eternal, alive.